Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Dancing with Damage. I'm Ian, your resident philosopher.
And I'm Abby, your resident author.
And today, we finish up our discussion on sociopathy.
How fun?
How fun. Because we talked last episode, Abby, about sociopathy or kind of any antisocial behavior in general, where the user is not experiencing conscious guilt as another kind of damage.
Yes, and we discussed the different ways that it might present itself. We talked about knives in versus knives out damage. And I think today we're getting into more examples of sociopathy in the world. That's
right. So, sort of an eye-opening political experience that's going on right now is in the US. It's 2026 right now. And President Trump was elected, I think it was in November 2024, or took office January 1st, 2025. I think those are the dates. And it's so interesting. It shows a lot of the aspects of damage and how it can present on an individual level and on a social level. And ultimately, we see the problems of ignoring damage and letting it proliferate.
And an important note, we are not psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors. We are not able to diagnose anybody. This is our personal opinions based on things we have seen and heard. And we are applying our theory and our understanding of the topic of sociopathy to our perceived notions of how things are currently. So we are not claiming anyone is a sociopath. We are just saying that in our personal opinions, we have noticed sociopathic traits.
Yeah, that's right. In The Social Blueprint, Abby, a book you and I co-authored, featuring Planthead on the cover, we do define a lot of words in our own style. Now, a good example of that is love. I'm sure if you looked up love in the Oxford Dictionary online, you would see quite a different definition than what we have, which is more about sacrifice for short-term
pain for long-term gain.
Yeah, that's well said. So when we say sociopath, we're referring to what we talked about last episode, that there are sort of three elements to particularly sociopathic behavior. I mean, it's probably generally not good to say someone is a sociopath, probably more constructive to say that behavior is sociopathic.
In our opinion.
In our opinion. Because at the root of our philosophy, and of course, you know, we're human, we're very human at times, it seems, and so we will make mistakes. But the reason it's better in our view to say someone is exhibiting types of behavior rather than saying that person is X is because the theory of damage, if you've reviewed The Social Blueprint or some of our other videos, is that the human being at its instinctive core has a soul or a drive to be a pro-social gregarious creature, and that's how we evolved. However, we say damage is sort of, you could almost think of it like a cancer, a mutation in the subconscious, which is responsible for our subconscious emotions and many, many of our behaviors. One example we made, Abby, was a puppet and a puppeteer. That most humans are acting, not when they're dealing with intellectual things, but decisions about intrapersonal, I should say. Well, intrapersonal and interpersonal. Decisions about your own well-being and decisions about the well-beings of others. Humans are more like puppets that are tied to the strings of the subconscious emotions, and if guilt gets a hold of that and damage gets a hold on the strings, then it's more like a cancer in a person's subconscious rather than the person itself. Because Abby's always saying,
damage is not your fault, it is not your parents' fault, but it is something we have to address. So we're not condoning the behavior, but we are saying we don't attack the person, we attack the behavior. If somebody is damaged, we can say we have to work together to stop the damaging behavior, but we don't write you off as a human being. That's not okay. It's like an ad hominem attack.
There you go. And I didn't bring this up last time, Abby, but would you agree with me that sociopathy, which is the title of this episode, episode 40, and we're in part 2 of that, would you agree with me that you could call sociopathy a selfish presentation of behavior?
Absolutely.
And we talk about that in the book, where often people will call a behavior selfish, and we think that's a really good litmus test to if a behavior is damaged. But not all selfish behavior is sociopathy. Just, I suppose, the same way all deers are mammals and all moose are mammals.
But not all mammals are moose.
Oh yeah, that's good. I was going to say, but not all moose are deer. But actually, what she said is the right way to break that down.
I don't think any moose are deer, but
They're deer to me.
Wow, were you planning that the whole time?
If I say yes, would you believe me?
I don't know, actually.
No, I was not. It was an attack of, it was a pun of opportunity. For all you D&D fans out there, it was an attack of opportunity on poor Abby, on her poor mind. So.
It's pretty good.
You like that?
I like that. That's good.
You like the attack of opportunity thing?
Yeah, we make fun of each other as a way to show affection, and that was very strong. I like that.
Yeah. No one expects the mammal pun. So, what was I saying? Oh, yes. Sociopathy, we said in the last episode, it has sort of three, in our view, and this isn't defined in the book, but this is kind of how we think most people would relate to the idea of sociopathy. I'm sure the DSM-5 or DSM-6 or whatever DSM we're on, it keeps going up, or I don't know, down. I don't review it. I've skimmed through it, but I'm sure it has quite a different definition. Abby and I, in our talks and in our book here, we prefer definitions that are truly functional, easy to remember, and have a real practical application. So when we say love, for example, is like a sacrifice for a person, et cetera, that's something that we can actually give examples of. So all I'll say, I just want to remind everyone, I guess, Abby, and thank you for tuning in, by the way, again. What we talked about last time was sociopathy was something that it was on a spectrum.
Yeah, so just because you exhibit the behavior doesn't mean you're 100% exhibiting sociopathy or not exhibiting it. It's like the saltiness of food. You know, it's not that there's no salt or it's the Dead Sea. There's layers of saltiness. If you eat prosciutto, that is more salty than if you eat Parmesan cheese, which is more salty than yogurt, but they all may have salty essences. So it's a spectrum. You can't just say it is or it is not. It is the gray area.
That's right. You know, someone could die at the end of their life, I guess I could say, having lived a very good life, but have committed acts of sociopathic behavior. It's in our nature to commit selfish activity. So that, to use Abby's example, that might be a chef that mainly makes desserts, but once in a while they might make a salty caramel treat. You can see Abby's very interested and wants to know more about this baker. But, spoilers, it's her. But again, we don't want to call someone a sociopath. It's much easier and more useful to say a behavior is sociopathic or sociopathy, as it says there. So, is on a spectrum, doesn't provoke, I should say, doesn't provoke a conscious feeling of guilt in the person doing the behavior.
Though it should.
Where it ought to reasonably, yes, because third category, because the behavior is in the perceived best interest of the user to the detriment of whatever recipient or recipients are experiencing the negative aspects.
It would be like if you are in a bicycle race with a couple other people and you loosened the bolts on the wheels of all of your competitors. That is a crime, but that is also in our definition on the spectrum of sociopathy because you are harming others to try to improve your own standing. And that would just be so evil.
So evil. And we won't get into psychopathy today. It's a pretty hot buzzword too. It tends to be associated more with people who commit. It's sort of that definition, but you add in the element of violence.
Yeah.
More or less. Again, Abby and I are not specialized in this, but what we like to do is give words a definition that
are functional.
And as we are, laymen or the common people, associate with the word. Because that's sort of what a language is at the end of the day. It's what do most people associate with this word? It's like currency. It's like, what do most people value this dollar at? Obviously, there's going to be somebody who's like, you know, a child might think the dollar is made of chocolate, so they might not give it the same value. Or there might be someone, a really smart person in marketing who's like, that dollar will be devalued in 7 months, therefore it is not worth 1 loonie. Or we have loonies in Canada. They are worth $1. So yeah, we like to give that practical application. Now, let's talk about the President Trump administration because it's very popular in the news to talk about it. And maybe we should start with how, in our theory, President Trump was elected in the first place.
Yeah. Yeah, this is our opinion of how we think this transpired.
So actually, very recently, there were protests all through the United States to basically condemn
The No Kings rally.
the No Kings rallies. They were all over the place. And they were sort of condemning the Trump administration. There has been popularity polls that have come out that seem fairly reliable that say a minority of the population supports the Trump administration. So how is it that the president is unpopular now, but was popular enough at the time of the election to secure office over the Democratic Party? Especially since the people of America were fairly familiar with President Trump as a leader, having had elected him back in 2016. So, Abby, if you were
A sociologist?
a sociologist, Abby's more plugged into social media than I am. I live under a big rock, and I like it there because it's damp. And if you've seen,
Because it's damp?
yeah, it's no dry skin. I don't know.
What?
So, I just got it. You know that cartoon SpongeBob SquarePants?
Yeah.
SpongeBob lives in a pineapple, and one of his, not next door neighbor, but I think next door neighbor is Patrick, the starfish.
Yeah.
Patrick lives under that flat rock,
Yeah.
and he's sort of portrayed as an imbecile.
Yeah.
He lives under a rock, metaphorically and physically.
Took 20 years, eh?
I never made that connection.
So if I were a sociologist,
Oh yeah, what is the is there any explanations being offered for how this could have happened?
I'll just say my opinion because we're allowed to say that, and I'm not going to say anyone else's opinion, and I'm not an expert. So in my opinion, what I have personally viewed was that the first time President Trump was elected, he was very inflammatory, and I will argue he shared racist views and some bigotry and tried to take away rights of some minority populations and reproductive rights. But he didn't do anything that went against what we would perceive as the super right Christian values, which tends to be the population that support him.
Okay.
So in my opinion, the reason he was elected again is because in his first term, he didn't do anything that went against the values of his core fan base. And we also know that there is some apathy towards politics. And unfortunately, if only 60% of the population who can vote, as an example, turn out, I don't know what the statistics were, but if only a minority of the population actually turn out to vote, and the people most motivated to vote are the radical minority who have what some would consider extremist views to limit people's rights and other people, then the person they like the most will win by default because they're the only people who showed up to vote. So I think that is what happened. And I think this term, President Trump is being more aggressive in his policies and in his decisions. And now I feel more feathers are being ruffled across the political spectrum. What do you think?
So now might be a good time to get into religion a bit, because as Abby has mentioned, a key component of President Trump getting elected not once but twice seems to be an appeal to religious groups in the United States. But the question that instinctively raises is, okay, the United States is a first world country. Mm-hmm. They're an educated country, a democratic country, and you would think, regardless of race, religion, creed, etc., each citizen would want what was best for the country as a whole. So how is it that one group, which is predominant in the States, has chosen a path that so clearly was going to lead to a fate that was not in the best interests of the country? And that brings us to what I like to call the hook, or the fishing hook of religion.
Okay.
It is like a metaphor. I do that from time to time. So let us say a fisherman, I don't know, whatever it is. They drop their hook in the water and then they tie it to the side of the boat, and then they drop another fishing line in the water further down the gunnel of their boat and they tie that. I guess you don't have to tie it. Actually, in many fishing boats, I think there are like fishing rod holders.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's a thing.
Okay, this is a boat with fishing rod holders. Fisherman puts 3 rods in the holders. Each one is a hook baited with a worm.
Okay.
They go down. 3 fish approach. Curious.
Tasty bait.
Tasty, no doubt. One fish takes a look at the hook with the worm and says, I do not trust this. I see this worm, but...
Worms are not aquatic.
Yeah, that's right. What is this worm? And I don't trust it. And fish goes away. He's a bit hungry at the end of the day because he didn't get anything delicious to eat. He was unsuccessful with the rest of his day, but...
He lived.
He lived. That's fine. The second fish sees the worm. Rah!
And noms it?
Nom. Bites it. Gets the worm in his stomach, but also is caught on the hook. Mm-hmm. And the third fish goes up to the worm and perceives the hook and says to themselves, well, the hook can't do anything to me if I don't bite it. It's an inanimate hook. This is not a sentient hook.
Okay.
This hook is brain dead. But this worm is delicious. And so the third fish nibbles the worm off the hook. And I'm sure if you've ever gone fishing, you've had this happen to you where the fish gets the bait but doesn't go on the hook. Swims away very happy. Now, Abby, which of these 3 fish do you think did the best in that whole exchange?
The one who got to eat the worm but didn't get captured.
And who do you think made off second best?
The fish that didn't eat the worm but got to live.
Yes, and the third best was, of course, the fish that got caught and reeled in.
Yeah, he only enjoyed that worm for a short amount of time.
That's right. And so it's fairly well established at this point that organized religions have operated almost like a business for quite a while. In terms of most major religions, and I think if you look into this, and Abby, you taught religion, so correct me if I'm wrong, but we seem to see very similar philosophies underpinning most major world religions, and even a golden thread of consistency in terms of the most important aspects of each of those philosophies. Biggest one being sort of love thy neighbor as yourself.
Treat others how you want to be treated. Don't steal stuff.
Yeah, be nice.
Yeah, don't be a jerk.
You can't really point me, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, if you have some example in the comments, we're very interested in hearing it. Because if you look at most major religions, or I would even venture to say all major religions, being nice and...
Sacrificing to show you care, tithes, donating money to support those who are less fortunate.
That's right. Taking your own taking your own personal pleasure and diminishing it for the benefit of some other higher cause is very consistent. That's the core of it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, each religion has its own flavor of it and how to best do this. But it's interesting that that's the case because it almost reminds me, actually, I'm not sure if you know about these things. They have these collar tabs that they'll put in shirts. I'm not even sure if I have one now. I might. Let's see if I can grab it.
I am aware, for I have done laundry, but only for that reason.
Yeah, there is one here. Can you get it out?
Yeah. No, it seems to be sewn in.
Okay, but you feel a piece of plastic in there.
Yes, and there are some shirts where you can remove them.
Okay, so, my bad. I did not test this before we did this, but it almost reminds me of a collar tab in that the collar is a certain shape to look a certain way and to serve a purpose, namely to hold a tie. But sometimes the collar needs some help. It's kind of gets loose or it gets tired after a while, loses its shape, doesn't look so sharp.
You want the crisp corners.
You want that. And so some genius said, well, let's just reinforce a little bit. So it's going to keep that shape, even when it's humid or even when the shirt's old or even when the shirt's had a rough day,
So the collar tab is a long oval piece of plastic that is wedged between the point in the shirt and a reinforced edge near the collar just to keep the shape, just in case you can't visualize what we're talking about.
There you go. So as we talk about in the book, the human instinct of a gregarious pack animal must be to be nice to others, because if an instinct of a pack mammal wasn't to be nice to others, but instead was instinctively to be cruel or violent to others, packs of mammals wouldn't be able to exist. You can imagine if the pack of wolves that's creeping up to get that caribou, one starts suddenly gnawing on the other's leg. That looks delicious. I'm hungry. I'm going to eat you instead of the caribou. You're kind of closer.
Closer?
You're closer, and I've always thought your leg looked delicious, right? This is not going to work. If you've got a pack of primates sitting in a tree in South Africa, and there's some predator underneath that looks like it might climb up, and one monkey pushes the other off, it's like, well, this is better. At least it won't get me. Not going to work. That pack is not going to do well. The instinct of humans, as we argue in I think it's The Blacksmith and the Sword, I think it's the chapter title. Don't quote me. Quote me after you've read it. See what I did there? Yeah, I don't know what's wrong with me. But what I'm getting at is the idea of religion is like trying to reinforce the good instincts that humans have when they're in danger of becoming frayed or falling away. Just like the collar tab keeps the collar straight when the collar is in danger of failing as a collar.
So in its purest form, religion is supposed to be a positive, uplifting tool humanity uses to be closer to itself. But unfortunately, nowadays, we've seen many examples throughout history and escalating in modern day 2026, where religion is being weaponized and used to promote sort of radical ideas or used to excuse behavior that is harmful. And it's not the purpose of religion, and it doesn't actually follow the tenets of the religion if you read the text and look at historically how the religion was upheld.
That's right. So that's what I'm getting at. So going back to the three fish, our friend the fish, we have a subsect of society that is like the fish, that turns their nose up at anything to do with religion and says, I want nothing to do with it. But they go hungry because in our argument and in the social blueprint, there is good sociological information in religious texts. Abby and I think the Bible is very interesting to read, particularly the New Testament. If you look at some of what Jesus purportedly preached, it's very helpful distillations of just good social etiquette.
And this is not to say you need to be religious to have fulfillment. It is to say that...
I just spilled coffee on myself.
That's very good. It is to say that whether you are religious or you're literate in religion, as in you understand basic religions and you understand the goals of religion, whether or not you follow them is not the issue. It's whether or not you understand that the religion exists and whether or not you're literate in sort of the core tenets religions offer. Because you don't have to follow a religion to get the benefit of knowing, be nice to people, don't steal stuff, tell the truth. It is helpful to read religious texts to understand the wisdom in the text without having to be religious yourself.
There you go. So we argue that it's a bad idea to forget about religious ideals altogether. We argue it's better to be like the fish that kind of picks and chooses what's truly relevant in the world of the scientific community, where social values are still good to know and good to remember. And the Bible, especially the New Testament, that's all Abby and I read. That's my recommendation of how to approach Christianity if you're
atheist
like we are, or leery about it. Very good, sometimes actually very comical in terms of how it's written.
Yeah, in the winter, allegedly, Jesus went to a fig tree and he was like, make me a fig, and it was winter, and the tree was like, I'm a tree. And then Jesus smote the tree and was like, how dare you not make me fruit? And the tree was like, it's winter, bro. So I always think that's pretty funny.
That's pretty good. But at the same time, Jesus had some pretty good lines. For example, he said, don't cast your pearls before swine. Well, we talk about that in the rules of discussion. You don't want to give your best ideas to people who are not going to respect even your transmission of ideas, and are going to just trample all over what you say with ad hominem attacks and things like that. But it's put together so well that it can be very useful. So what I'm getting at, Abby, is when we talk about President Trump, we see a population that for a long time has had religious values, but has not elected such an unfit president, in our opinion, and also in terms of quantifiable social metrics. I would say it's pretty easy to make a case that in terms of economic impact, human suffering, quality of life, President Trump has been very poor. So how is it that the population that was able to elect fit rulers in the past, but was religious, now that religion is causing the election of unfit presidents? So how do we reconcile this? Well, Abby, what was one of the very common examples when it comes to relationships that a damaged person will exhibit?
No matter how many times it fails, you always date someone with personality traits that totally clash with yours or values that totally clash with yours, and you sort of know going in the relationship will fail.
A person goes into a relationship with a person who's not right for them, right?
Yeah.
And how does person A, going into the relationship with person B, how does person A see person B?
Well, usually they just focus on the good stuff. You know, they totally ignore the red flags. It's like they're wearing, you know, like a green screen, how if you put a filter on, it totally removes anything green. So people who on the news, occasionally they wear green stuff and then they disappear. Mm-hmm. I feel like they put on green screen glasses and then all of the red flags just sort of disappear into the distance and all they see are the positive aspects.
Okay, so we know that is a phenomenon that damage can create, is selective perception to the detriment of the perceiver. You know, it would be like if you were walking or driving down the street and you had glasses that had a bar that, or some sort of device that blocked out all traffic signage. Wouldn't that be a dangerous trip?
Oh my gosh, that makes me anxious just thinking about it.
That would be, so that's scary. So as our theory purports, especially since the Industrial Revolution, or, you know, basically at that inception, where unmoderated technology started to dominate the household, communities, massive urbanization, and an increase of sort of a reliance on technology, you could say, that was unparalleled before. Because of that, we have an increase of damage, and we talk about that in various chapters in the book. I won't get into it here. But now we have a generation that's come that is damaged, has religious, cultural history, and now exhibiting similar behavior to someone who just is selectively perceiving things as if they were in a bad relationship. Because by choosing aspects of religion that are detrimental to the purpose of the religion, you can see how that fish has bitten the hook, but not the worm. Because as we know, religion and any philosophy really, especially an ancient, archaic one, and especially organized religion, has aspects to it that are not true to the source material, more relevant to controlling behavior and sort of convenience for people in the power structure of a religion. But to champion those ideas and not the true essence of a religion is like skipping the worm, going for biting the hook. And that's how we get a population that is damaged, religious in the States, or highly religious, and electing unfit ruler like President Trump.
Wow. And would you like to, just to close us out, because we are talking about sociopathy, although I'm presuming religion is going to be in the title once I have uploaded this to the internets.
Nice. Yeah, we kind of got off piece there.
But would you like to give some examples of maybe how the administration in America, in our opinion, is exhibiting sociopathic tendencies based on our definition from our theory?
Yes. So we've got damaged population. We've talked about the house, or the barn and the planks in the book, where if enough planks are damaged, the barn collapses, hurts everyone inside. And what was your question again?
Would you be willing to give us some examples of some sociopathic, based on our definition, traits and behaviors that we believe fall under our definition of sociopathy that the administration has enacted that we feel are really good examples of behavior that we don't love?
So, two leap out at us when we think about probably the hallmarks of what history will see as really negative policy that have come out of President Trump's administration. One are the tariff actions, and two, and pretty recently, is the military action in Iran. Military operation. Safe to call it a war, I would say, by logical definition.
Whether Congress has claimed it one or not.
Yeah. So, what of those do you think it's better to talk about?
Why don't we start with the tariffs and then we'll move on to the war, and then maybe in a future episode we can hit on some more?
Yeah, we're going to talk about all of it because it's these actions in history that shape it. So it's worth talking about because in our view, really everything can be explained if you understand damage, but if you don't understand damage, all you're seeing is the actors putting on the play and not realizing they're actors.
Yeah, damage is sort of the magical extra vision that allows you to connect all the dots and sort of see the world. It's less mysterious and less surprising, and you can almost predict next steps or the types of next steps that are likely because you understand the types of behavior people purport.
Yeah, I mean, if you were watching Phantom of the Opera, Abby loves Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah.
And what was the main female character called? She's the singer.
Christine.
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 You didn't think this was a musical show, and you are right. It still isn't. So I think at one point, Christine sort of goes into the depths of the bowels of the opera to see the Phantom, right?
Well, he kidnaps her, but yeah.
Well. So maybe the audience is like, why didn't she run away? Or like, why didn't she call for help? Like, why did she go down there? If you didn't know it was a play, that would really
Distress you
and frustrate you and anger you, maybe. I think it all kind of works out. But anyway, if you know what's in the script, you're just kind of like, okay, well, that makes sense. They wrote that, and now
they're doing the thing.
And now they're doing it. Like, it makes sense. So that's why we really like the theory we've put forward, because I've yet to really find a situation where it doesn't kind of peel the fog away.
So can you peel the fog away from why we think tariffs are a bad idea?
Oh yeah, sociopathy. That's the title of the thing. Let's talk about the thing. So, I dived to the point after like half an hour. So, tariffs. So why were they negative? Well, I'm not an economist, and many people have understood this much better than me. If you're on YouTube right now, which I assume you are, there will be better explanations out there. But Abby, you have a bit of a background in economy. Why don't you speak to, and also you watch a lot of these programs and understand it much better than I do. So what was the purported goal of the tariffs according to President Trump?
To increase industry intranationally, or to make more local people create goods and services as opposed to paying other countries to import them.
Okay.
And also to make more money from other countries selling goods in the United States.
Okay. I was going to ask if that was in the long term or the short term, but we don't have to go there. Let's go to this instead. Has that been the case, or is it likely to become the case, those two goals realizing themselves?
No.
Okay. So that's all. Let's stop there. I don't want to get into the reasons why. Again, we're not here to do that. More so, I'm here to say, well, now that you've said that, Abby, and we have some pretty good expert evidence probably to back that up. If you do some research of your own, I'm sure you'll find that too. So we have a leader who wanted a goal for a country, but got a bad result from it. Now, it is possible for someone in a position of power, like a parent or the owner of a pet or the principal of a school, it is possible to make a decision that doesn't pan out.
But you have to be willing to pivot, admit your mistake, and listen to experts, because Again, Ian's right. You don't have to listen to my reasons why. It will likely not happen because there are hundreds of people who are experts in this area screaming from the rooftops currently in the United States saying it is a bad idea, it should stop.
That's right. If the decision for tariffs were on trial, it's pretty safe to say
They would be guilty.
that there's overwhelming evidence from reliable witnesses that are neutral, presumably, that it was a bad idea. So, yeah, people can make mistakes, but to not do research into an idea or to make a decision that's so flagrantly doomed to fail, especially when a lot of suffering is at stake, is a sociopathic decision if we can show that there was some, according to what you've come to understand, Abby, is there some element of personal gain that the Trump administration may have received through this action?
Yes.
What would that be?
Personal financial benefit. So,
We don't have to get into it.
no, that's my perception.
Well, we don't have to get into it because, again, Abby and I don't live in the White House. We are not monitoring bank accounts.
We're not American.
We're not American. We don't see any insider trading or what's going on there. But we accept, based on research,
Our theory, and also just like news articles and things people are saying, we can connect the dots.
yeah, sometimes if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's reasonable to infer it's a duck. And so Abby's quite right. It's reasonable to infer that there was an element of personal gain in the tariff decision for the Trump administration. So, do we have elements of sociopathy? We have action that's on a kind of spectrum. 2, it has not appeared to have caused any remorse for the person using that behavior. And 3, it was in the best interest of the user and to the detriment of others.
Yes, and if I may, just because we're on a roll, the war in Iran, which you mentioned, and I would argue you have much more experience in the art of military understanding than I do. I think it's fair. He spent 10 years serving in the military, and I have spent no years serving in the military due to my extreme anaphylaxis and general weak and small physicality. I would not hack it.
She was going to say The Art of War, I think, but she was like, wait a minute.
That's a
book.
title.
This is a book.
Yes. So because you have more expertise than me, I will ask you, would you agree, I don't know how into it you want to get, but would you agree that the parallel exists that we have established for tariffs, that the war in Iran is also not to the best interest of Iran or America, and there is, in our perception, personal gain for the Trump administration for pursuing this course of action that may or may not be war based on their own definition?
Yes. So, and I don't want to shortchange that subject. It's such an interesting subject. So, is yes helpful that it meets those 3 definitions?
Yes, and you can say however much you would like to say on that matter, and I think that'll be interesting.
Well, only because I want to go back to the tariffs thing. And maybe in another episode, we'll talk about the war.
Maybe next episode will just be about war.
War, what is it good for it? The next episode.
Absolutely something.
Absolutely the next episode. No, I mean, look, one thing I just want to say before I forget is because you can go online and it's almost more common than the weather to hear about why President Trump is acting the way he's acting. But I've never once heard the word damage mentioned as it pertains to our definition. You'll often hear dementia. You'll hear that he's just a narcissist. And that's sort of the end of it.
I don't know why I thought you were going to say an arsonist. That's not true.
Are there any other kind of notions?
I mean, I've heard the word selfish.
Yeah.
I've heard personal gain and personal profit, and people talking about the more than $1 billion he has personally accumulated in a year in a role that should not be that profitable. So I've heard that.
Yeah. But what we have to understand in our theory is that we are probably dealing with a man of advanced age who obviously hasn't been keeping very good health habits. And so it is common to see mental decline accelerate in that demographic. There's no doubt. But you see, let's make a hypothetical and say Joe Biden had stayed in the race and become president. It's very unlikely that even another person who purportedly had some mental decline would have made these series of errors or lapses in judgment, you could call them, that the Trump administration has made. So it's not sufficient to say it's old age, it's mental decline. And then we go to, well, the person is just sort of evil or sort of selfish. But what we say is the cause is that President Trump has a subconscious, as all humans do. He has a subconscious, he has a limbic system, he has the emotions that make up a mammal, just the same way he has a heart, lungs, a spinal cord, femurs, I assume, right? He has these things. So he has a subconscious and it's loaded with guilt. We talked last episode that neglect and spoiling and rudderless parenting can cause heavy sociopathy in adulthood. And so this is probably what we're dealing with. And again, I can't diagnose anybody, but all we're doing is applying our theory to a person who is displaying traits, and that is, in our view, the most likely cause. So maybe that at least loops back around to sociopathy.
It does. And I think maybe, would you like to talk about war next time we have our discussion?
Now, who doesn't want to talk about a good, old-fashioned, new-fashioned war?
We're not pro-war, in case you're wondering.
No. War is hell, as they say.
War is bad.
War is interesting because it really is sort of like, how can we call it? War is a bit like a trial in family court. You know, you have two parties that aren't seeing eye to eye about something in a family law dispute. Maybe they want custody of the kids or money, different money or whatever. One person wants the house, a land dispute. And you're supposed to try mediation, talking it out. You're supposed to try arbitration. You're supposed to try all these different things to reconcile the issue. But often it just doesn't work, and you have to go to a trial where it just becomes taxing for both parties, what we like to call a Pyrrhic victory, meaning even if you win, you've lost because of the effort so great of the battle. And so, yeah, I mean, when war is involved, what you're really dealing with is a failure of more productive
resolution
and governance failing. So again, a hallmark of damage when a nation that is developed enough to have a military, but not developed enough to sort out whatever issue the war is for. But anyway, yeah, we can talk about war next time. It's like one of those sprinkler systems you see in buildings. You know, the little metal ones, they have little snowflakes at the end of them.
Yeah.
I don't know what the snowflakes are for. Do they spin?
I think maybe they just disperse the water out, so it's more like a sprinkler as opposed to just one person getting soaked underneath it.
Oh, so they're not like, because if they spun, it would be like ninja stars.
Maybe they do. I don't know. I've never seen one in action.
But they're sort of a tool of last resort because you really don't want the sprinkler system going off because, you know, if you work in an office or a building with electronics.
It'll destroy them.
Or humans. Humans don't want to get wet if they're not in the shower, I guess. So they don't want to, when they're wearing the nice shoes, you don't want to get all wet. So really, if that sprinkler system is going off, everything else has failed up to that point, right? And there's a fire and there's danger, but everything else has failed. Like
not setting off a fire in the first place.
Yeah, like somehow a fire went off. How did that happen? That's not supposed to be a thing in an office. And number two, no one was around who saw it, I guess, or no one was trained in firefighting or.
Usually fires start small and there are a couple minutes where you could probably, depending on the fire, put it out before the sprinkler system would be engaged.
That's right. So really to get to the sprinkler system going off, a lot has had to have gone wrong. So Abby asked me about war. I say it's the sprinkler system of the world. And it's something we'll talk about next episode. How about that, Abby?
That sounds good. Thanks for hanging out with us. Hope you guys have a great day. you.